Joining me now is former Liberal Senator Holly Hughes and Menzies Research Centre Senior Fellow Nick Cater. Nick, like their climate policy, the government's Middle Eastern policy is completely divorced from reality, isn't it?
Yeah, they're going to do government, aren't they? They're always going to do this and going to do that. It's the politics of good intentions, you know. So first they're going to get rid of every coal-fired power station in Australia by 2030 or thereabouts. And if that wasn't hard enough, and of course they've got nowhere near even starting that project, if that wasn't hard enough, now they're going to bring peace to the Middle East. They're going to end Hamas as a fighting force. So it's the very thing that Israel's been trying to do for about 25 years. Albanese apparently can do that just by saying it will happen. It's extraordinary, really, his powers, or at least what he imagines his powers to be, but it's completely hollow. It's a disgrace, and he should be called up on it. But, of course, he's not being, is he, by most of the press.
Well, I think, Nick, when you've got the arrogance to believe you can change global temperatures by manipulating policy, you probably do believe you can do anything, Holly, including bringing peace to the Middle East. Could you imagine a more inept government than this one?
No, it's really quite breathtaking how inept these guys are. I mean, they're actually making Whitlam look competent, which is saying something. And, you know, it was Whitlam who brought the two-state solution to party politics in Australia, so it's quite fitting. But how any Labor member is going to turn up to the Parliamentary Friends of Israel going forward, I have no idea. And I do feel for some of those, particularly Labor right members, who are strong supporters of Israel, who must be sitting there at the moment just scratching their heads with what this is all about. But I think we do need to be really mindful of the impacts that this can have flowing on. We know that we get intelligence from Mossad. We know that the Mossad intelligence has helped Australia become aware of possible threats and terrorism threats. Well, I can't see Netanyahu giving the big go-ahead for, you know, Bibi's going to ring Mossad and go, yeah, keep the Aussies in the loop still. Like, I think we can assume that channel will be shut down. And it's just appalling to think that they've got no idea how this is going to happen. The Palestinian Authority hasn't had elections because they know if they do, Hamas will win. Mm-hmm. So even if Hamas is not the name on the ballot paper, it will be some form of Hamas. These are kids that have gone through UNRWA schools where they've been taught the value, you know, how much their family will be paid, how many shekels their family will be paid per Jewish civilian they murder as a martyr. And you expect that this entire life of indoctrination will be forgotten because Albo says, like, it's just a joke. And I think, quite frankly, a lot of Australians, and I certainly feel embarrassed to be, you know, internationally to say I'm an Australian when this is what this government is doing in representing us.
Yeah, some of the issues you've just raised are really good questions, and I'm going to raise some of those with Elon Levy, the former Israeli government spokesperson, who I'll speak with in a moment. But I want to go back to some local politics for a moment. New South Wales opposition leader Mark Speakman is facing a possible leadership challenge after a controversial renewables vote led to the resignation of shadow frontbencher Wendy Tuckerman. She claimed Liberal MPs had not been adequately briefed on the bill. So this week we're learning the party's donations are drying up as fundraising from MPs drops off. So I've got to ask you, Nick, is Speakman's leadership becoming untenable and over climate issues?
Look, I can't bring any knowledge to bear on the workings of the New South Wales Parliament or the New South Wales Liberal Party in the Parliament. I've far too much to do to worry about that. But I think this just goes to show how the net zero issue has become so key within the Liberal Party as a point of debate, because it represents a whole lot of other things. And one thing it represents is just whether we're prepared just to be frank and honest with the public and only promise to do what we know we can do, as opposed to something like this, which, you know, as we've discussed with Albanese, is just pie in the sky right now, right? I mean, you and I go to church every Sunday and we say, thy kingdom come, but we don't think it's going to happen imminently or frequently. And I feel the same about net zero and the two-state solution, quite frankly.
Well, Holly, you could speak to the New South Wales Labor Party.
Liberal Party.
Sorry, Liberal Party. You probably speak to the Labor Party
might
as well.
Be more at
not
the
yet,
moment.
not yet the Labor Party.
How much trouble is Speakman in?
Look, I think you've got about 7 MPs who are sitting in marginal seats of less than 2%, and they're going to be having a look, you know, where's this going, what's happening. You know, I did see the article today about the donations and drying up, but, you know, also the way that it works is MPs tend to raise money through their conferences and then they pay a sum to the division. Well, certainly that's what happens federally. So I'm assuming that's what happens at a state level. So hopefully they've got conferences with some money in the bank ready to fight an election campaign, because it's a pretty dire state when you're in opposition at a state and federal level, and, you know, people aren't falling over themselves to get to fundraisers, and particularly when they're looking down the barrel of not going into government. It's a very, very difficult time to fundraise. I'm going to one on Friday. So, you know, I'm doing my bit for the party.
Well, Mark Speakman complained he was being undermined by anonymous voices. I reckon Mark Speakman is pretty anonymous in New South Wales.
Well, I think that's absolutely the point. And I think Mark has to stop thinking like a lawyer and start thinking like a politician. The fact that he prevaricated of whether he would support a motion to expel Gareth Ward was just absolutely unforgivable from a political sense. You just can't sell that. If the courts were going to override it, then that's up to the courts and let the courts wear it. But from a political standpoint, the community has expectations that if you are a convicted rapist, you are expelled from the parliament. And, you know, the fact that the biggest publicity he got last week was about whether or not they would support that motion is a little bit frightening.
Let's get back onto the Labor Party for a second. Labor are being urged by one of their own to rethink their dogmatic climate policy ahead of Jim Chalmers' economic roundtable. Former Labor Minister Joel Fitzgibbon, speaking in Canberra last night, said, and I quote, "We don't have to hold our economy back to be a world leader in climate change action. We need to adjust, recalibrate and broaden our course of action." Mark, he urged the government to reconsider its view of nuclear technology as well. So some common sense being spoken to the Labor federal government. Do you think they'll listen?
No, they're like Teflon coated when it comes to common sense, aren't they? Really, I mean, it'll just roll off them. Of course, this is sensible, and Joel Fitzgibbon was always one of the more sensible members of the Labor government.
I did offer Joel a number of times when I was looking after the Hunter Regional Liberal Party because I felt that he was very isolated in the Labor Party, because he's a very sensible voice, Joel.
Will he be listened to in this case? Absolutely not. There's just something about once the whole bureaucracy and the government get involved and promise one course of action, it's very hard for them to reverse it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they just don't act like a private company. I mean, they're not like Henry Ford, who went bankrupt twice before he set up the Ford Motor Company, learning from his mistakes. Government doesn't act like that. So I'm afraid they're stuck in this position. I get the impression that they're increasingly realising that this is going to be a burden the closer we get to 2030.
Yeah. All right, just quickly, one other thing I want to touch on. Here in New South Wales, they're scrapping electronic monitoring for criminals on bail. Victoria have done the same. But it leaves the door open for courts to set some pretty unusual bail conditions. Or, of course, they could leave more alleged offenders in jail while they await trial. That'd be an idea. The Public Service Association boss Stuart Little has called the ban on these ankle bracelets a recipe for disaster, saying, quote, the remand system at the moment is a real problem. The prisons can't take it. We're short-staffed. Holly, this comes after a judge told a alleged murderer to send selfies to his...
Well, how is he out on bail if you're an alleged murderer for a start? That'd be my question number one. But this is insane. And, I mean, we don't want to go anywhere near what Victoria's doing with its crime rate. We need to be toughening up our bail laws. We need to be ensuring that criminals, we know where they are and they're doing the right thing. This is just ludicrous on steroids.
I would have thought so. Holly, Nick, thanks so much for joining me tonight.